Let's move now to Chinese EV maker BYD, which has just made a huge announcement that could potentially change the EV industry. Let's put this up there on the screen. News came out of China just yesterday. BYD will now offer, quote, God's Eye self-driving system on all of its models. So BYD obviously is the largest electric vehicle maker in China, and it now has a quote unquote advanced self-driving system. Now, every video I've watched says it's roughly equal to the Tesla full self-driving. It has some important differences that the L3 nerds will dig into, but let's just say it's better than what's on your Toyota CR or your Honda CR-V assisted autopilot. So we leave it at that. But the extraordinary part of it is not the real fact that it's rolling out, but the fact that it is now installing it on every single model that they sell, including the Seagull budget hatchback, which it currently retails inside of China for $9,600. Yes, wow. You heard me correctly. This is a huge deal because it challenges the Tesla market share abroad. So in the United States, obviously you cannot buy BYD, you can't buy any of these Chinese EVs, but China, which we're about to get to, is a net exporter actually of cars. Their electric vehicles are highly desirable for many people across the world, in Europe and elsewhere, in a lot of areas, especially with cheaper cost of living. They have genuine innovation in a lot of their electric car industry. They have a battery supply chain, which is heavily relied on by Tesla and other US automakers. So they are, I would put them almost 15, 20 years ahead of us. They don't have no EPA telling them what they can and can't do. They're like, if you can extend the range, if you need regulation, the government is there to help you because it's an instrument of national power. And it's extraordinary. You were talking in the intro, how Americans currently have a real boomer mindset around Chinese cars. I love electric vehicles. I'll be totally transparent. If these weren't from China, I would buy one in a heartbeat. They are better than any cars that we sell here in America.
No, if we didn't have like just a block on these cars,
I would buy them. Yeah, there's no question. If it was any other country, I would buy it.
Our domestic EV industry would be dead.
Oh, dead.
Over.
Dead as a doornail.
Over.
There's only a few select people who are telling Americans and others how good these cars are. And one of these guys who I follow is Forrest. He does Forrest Auto Reviews. I love the way that he does reviews, but he's able to get his hands on a lot of different Chinese EVs. I watch like every video that this guy does. So we thought we would put together a mashup of some of the cars, the Chinese EVs reviews that he's done in the past. The very last one that we'll show you is the actual Seagull from BYD that we were talking about, but this is a range of luxury EV down to the most budget model. So you got to see here what we are missing out on.
What is up, guys? Right behind me is a car from China, which is a big deal because there's currently no Chinese manufacturers in America, which is kind of a shame because this car is really cool. So obviously you can use your key, or you can leave your key at home and use NFC. This car is a plug-in hybrid, and on just the battery, it can do about 60 miles, which is more than any plug-in hybrid in America. And on a full charge and a full tank of gas, it can do well over 650 miles. If I push the button on the side of my seat, that'll fold down my armrest. My seats are heated, ventilated, and massaging. I have an area right down here for my phone, have built-in sunscreen shades. If I push this button, my cup holder comes out, and I can do this. I'm 6 feet tall for reference. You can be 7 feet tall and still lounge back here. But what if I want to watch a movie? A TV can't fold up into this small space, but a projector can. Yeah, this is pretty sweet. You also get a built-in fridge. Behind me is what $8,400 can get you in China. This is the Wuling Bingo. It's a tiny 4-door EV. It starts at $8,400, but even fully loaded, it's only $12,000. You get full LED lights, these tiny cute wheels, and it can do 250 miles on a full charge. You also get a lot of space in the trunk.
You guys see what I'm talking about? I mean, look, let's be honest, these cars are sick. There's other ones, not even BYD. I can't pronounce them, but the self-driving tech, the lounge, and they retail for like $60,000. There are several like Japanese similarities, not EVs per se, but Lexus and Toyota models that are only available in Japan, but they're not sending their best over here. But I wanted people to understand this because the rest of the globe has access to BYD, and they like it. And this is one of the most extraordinary differences now, because Tesla obviously is probably the most successful auto startup of all time in the United States. It is currently the crown jewel of the American EV industry. Obviously, Elon and all of that removed. It's one of the top sellers of cars in almost every state in the United States. I believe the Tesla Model 3 or the Model Y was one of the top sellers in the state of California. We've done a lot of bets through the IRA, industrial policy, on this, saying, oh, we're going to try and compete. But the truth is, it's like we are getting our asses kicked at a very structural level. You can see here clearly how even just 4 years ago, that the United States and China were roughly tied in terms of the car exports to the rest of the world. Well, in the last 4 years, they've gone stratospheric, and now they have more cars exported to the rest of the world than Japan, Mexico, Germany, South Korea, and the United States. So there has been a massive shift in the way that the Chinese car exports have become a central part of their ability to trade with the rest of the world. And this goes to the central heart of the problem between the US economy and the Chinese economy. They build shit, and they do it well. Their government policy is all organized around finding people like the BYD CEO and being like, what do you need? You need a supply chain? We'll build it for you. Oh, you need expedited approval and market share and all of this industrial capacity? Done. And 5-10 years ago, or actually even 20 years ago, a lot of people didn't believe, Charlie Munger, our famous investor, he said that the BYD CEO is one of the smartest people who we ever met in his entire life. And that if he could have bet more on the company, that he would have. I listened to the last interview that he ever gave with Acquired. Highly recommend it if you can. But just to give people an example of how they back their critical entrepreneurs who make stuff in the physical world. And the payoff on their technology is that by getting 10, 15 years ahead of us, they are now exponentially in just 4 years topping the United States, even Japan, in terms of the number of net exports. Without export control, it's over. It's over.
True.
In terms of electric vehicles. Now, maybe we can catch up. You got to buy us 10, 15 years, but we don't control the European Union. We don't control the export laws of a huge number of US allies. And what is the most revealed preference of all time across the world? Consumers want what? Good products at cheap prices. And if you give them the option, they're going to buy it. So this is an existential problem that we have. And their ability to compete, to offer full self-driving for free on a $10,000 car. In the US, if you buy a Tesla, you want full self-driving, you either pay up to $100 a month or $8,000 up front. $8,000 for the software, which is roughly, 20% less than the price of the car in China. So that's what we're dealing with here. Now, obviously, it's a tiny little hatchback, but still, what's a Toyota Camry go for these days? Probably $30,000?
Probably, yeah.
I'm guessing here. I'll look it up while you react.
Well, I was going to say, a part of why they have so many exports of their vehicles is there's been a huge shift, which has been incentivized by the government in China towards electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. So half of the new vehicles bought in China now are either EVs or they're plug-in hybrids. So now they have all of these traditional gas-powered vehicles that don't really Chinese consumers no longer really want. And so that's a lot of what is being offloaded into Europe and other places around the world, and has been very popular in the Middle East, very popular in Latin America, because they're so cost efficient. But I think the piece about the differences between the economies is really important, because they did 15 years ago, they identified that a particular Chinese premier who identified EVs as one of their highest priorities, and they invested a lot of money into it. And they, also this actually does touch on the USAID discussion as well, because China's Belt and Road Initiative, part of their effort of projecting soft power and building goodwill around the world, was about establishing these supply chains specifically for EV batteries. And they have done a tremendous job in locking up a lot of those mineral resources. USAID, as Senator Chris, Chris Murphy, I think, that kind of let the cat on the bag about what USAID is actually about. One of the things that he name-checked was securing rare earth minerals around the world. And he's right about that. That is part of the goal of USAID. So, for example, the HIV program that PEPFAR that has been in place since the George W. Bush administration, one of the countries where it has been incredibly important and been a genuine lifeline for people is Zambia. Well, Zambia had a huge problem with HIV and AIDS. It's in a much better place now because of the investments that we made there. But also Zambia happens to have a lot of mines of things like cobalt. And we have invested a lot of money and been able to have those partnerships in Zambia of securing those rare earth materials, as Chris Murphy said, in part because of those more sort of like, humanitarian investments that we made in the country. So when we talk about, just to give, this is like a real world example of when we say soft power projection, I know that can sound very abstract. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about. And that's what China has really accomplished with their Belt and Road Initiative very, very effectively. But because they have been so much more intentional about their industrial policy and really got, while we were still in full-on neoliberal mode and industrial policy was like, and tariffs were like a dirty word, they were planning for what the industries of the future would be and where they wanted to lead. And now with BYD, we see the way that that has really paid off for them.
It's shocking. I mean, 8 to 9% of new car sales in the European Union as of early 2024, according to Claude, are made in China. 8 to 9%. This is after a 39% increase from just the year 2023. So in a 4-year period, they are gobbling up European car market share. And like I said, I mean, their ability to compete in the supply chain, compare those BYD vehicles to a Rivian. Look, no offense, I think Rivians look cool. They cost like $80,000 and they go like 200 miles. And if you get into...
I think they look dumb, personally.
Really? I think that I like the look of them.
You have more of an affinity for these like futuristic.
I do.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah,
the Cybertruck, I think, is the ugliest
I like both.
thing I've
I like
ever
futuristic stuff. I really love retro stuff. So stuff like a Ford Bronco,
Yeah.
the old...
Yeah, those are cool.
well.
That I'm down with.
But yeah, I mean, Rivian, fine. It's a hot selling car. People really like them, but they're paying $80,000 for it. Okay, in China, if you pay $80,000 for an EV, it's going to be like that projector car. It's going to have 2 recliners in the back seat and a nice little tray where you can eat hot pot with built-in chopsticks. If you want a car like that here in America, you're going to pay $200,000, and you probably still won't even be able to. You still won't even get half of the features that are inside of it. That's the stakes of what we're talking about. So I'm worried. I don't see any indication that we're going to get our act together. One thing the Chinese do, which I think is amazing, is they have these gas generator EVs, which is just a plug-in hybrid or kind of equivalent, where they have an 800-mile range, where you have a gas generator on top of an EV battery that has a 300 miles. I mean, that would be incredibly useful. It basically makes it so that you could have hybrid systems where you can fill gas and a supercharger network. Stuff like that doesn't even exist here.
Yeah.
Our plug-in, what's the best plug-in hybrid in America? I'm trying to think, probably a Toyota RAV4, if I had to guess in terms of affordability. I don't think that thing goes more than like 40 miles on a range. So just think about the difference that we have in terms of and we pay more than their cars, not to mention insurance and all this other bullshit.
Well, and I mean, Trump has made it quite clear that any sort of EV support that was previously provided under the Biden administration, he wants to roll back. I know they've specifically stripped the funding from the program to build out the charger network, which obviously makes it much more feasible for regular people to be able to have EVs, and also helps to provide a market for domestic EV producers. So it's the opposite of a priority from the Trump administration. So I don't see any indication why we would catch up at this point.
Honestly, maybe it's the right thing to do, because why should we even compete at this point? It's like, let's just buy gas vehicles, and it's like, that's all we're really good at. We pump a lot of gas because they have so clearly gotten ahead on this that without direct investment, now we wouldn't even be able to compete for a decade. I still just can't get over that chart of the 4-year period of their ability to export. It's insane. So look, I've said it before. People think I hate China, or it's like, no, I respect them. that's in terms of my criticism of America. It's that we don't even come close in so many areas of their ability to think strategically, to think long-term, to develop an industry if they want to. Even the DeepSeek idea is let's do the same thing for cheaper. You can't help but respect a lot of competition, even if it makes you look foolish.
I mean, I also think it was and maybe this isn't a sort of overemphasized part of the DeepSeek story, but the fact that the Chinese government was like, we don't want our best and brightest going into the financial sector. We don't want them to just be like financial speculators. Oh, and by the way, they're like, we're not crypto. We're not doing that shit.
Well,
like,
yeah.
We're not doing that shit.
That's the Indians too. They also hate crypto.
They're smart.
Yeah.
Because we're funneling like some of our brightest talent into these just like brazen Ponzi schemes. Crypto and financial engineering on Wall Street is like the more refined version of that. And we're like, they were like, we're not really interested in doing that. We're going to cut the salaries for financial type jobs and push our best and brightest graduates into research and technology, whether it's AI or whether it's EV battery development, et cetera. And that also is an important component of this. Is like, where do your best minds, your best technical minds, where do they go? And in the U.S. oftentimes
McKinsey.
McKinsey, it's Wall Street, it's Goldman. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.